Real quick, just one transaction. We signed tight end Jake Powell, and we waived quarterback JT Barrett. We're still at our 90 count. Any questions?
Sean, we kind of figured Mike will be in pretty soon. But is it comforting, I guess, to have him in?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, he's an important part of what we do offensively. He's experienced. I felt real positive. I knew Mike was going to come in good shape, so it's good to have him back. It's good to see him out there moving around.
Sean, what would you say is Michael Thomas's greatest asset? His hands?
Yeah, I think he's a strong target in traffic. He's one of those guys that has a good radius for the quarterback. I think he's a tremendous practice. I mean, he's a guy that really works at his craft relative to the whole week leading up to the game. But his strength is run after the catch. Those are all things that I think he does very well.
Sean, do you think he's about as double covered, especially since he operates in traffic, about as double covered as you'll see in this league?
Well, it's hard to say because, I mean, it varies per team, per coverage. There are weeks where, we'll get a heavier role, maybe on third down specifically. I think a lot of it depends on down and distance. I'm sure there are a handful of players. You look closely at defense as to, who you got to take away. And certainly he's one of those players, if you're defending us, that you want to, limit and try to minimize the threat he can have on you. And, that's something that you've got to work through formationally. That's something you got to work through relative to the quarterback's progression. And that's part of the little bit of the chess match each weekend.
And does that make them, and that catch rate he had last year of almost 85% was so kind of astronomical anyway, but considering...
Well, the catch rate just deals with the consistency at which a ball goes to him and he catches it. But if you're putting on a Wednesday night, third down reel, and you're the opponent and you're looking at 2 to 3 or 4 to 6 and you're trying to look at who the threats are, you're trying to make sure you've got a good game plan to cover those threats, and he's one of them.
Was it important to get his contract done sooner rather than later, just so you can get him back out here?
Well, I think that's the case. You don't run into these situations like you might have 8-10 years ago, where you might go 5, 6, 7 days with your rookie first round pick. That's kind of changed now with the slot system. But it was good to get it done and get him out here. Obviously, we're preparing. There's a lot that we're doing right now, and so there always is that sense of urgency.
Sean, when you look at Drew working with different receivers, and obviously with Jared Cook, like zone versus man, you see him on a particular play, maybe it might have been an incompletion, and Drew will get with Jared and say, well, this is what I'm expecting. Is that something you do on the field and in the film room, obviously?
Yeah, I mean, that'll happen with an immediate response. Drew might grab him, coach might grab him, and you see something, and then again you confirm it when you're watching the tape. That's why we try to, as much as we can, watch the film in groups rather than separate. So there is that dialogue, and yeah, I mean that's the things that you're trying to get ironed out prior to the regular season starting.
Sean, in the past, you've highlighted players that when the pads come on, it kind of changed for positive for them. Is there a couple of guys that...
One guy, we were talking about personnel yesterday. I thought the last few days, Dwayne Washington stood out. He's someone that, we know we can play in the kicking game, but he's had some good practices, and you've noticed it. I think Trey Hendrickson's at his weight and playing well. Onyemata is another player. I mean, those are a few players that that are you're seeing pretty consistently. McCoy's done well inside, and it's still early.
Sean, you talked about how Mike Thomas practices at such a high level. How much does that impact other guys to also help them?
Yeah, I mean, it's just there's a formula for him, and sometimes even in walkthrough, with Mike, it's almost full speed. Darren Sproles was that way. So he's got a way that he gets ready in regards to stretch and prepared mentally and physically to play a game each weekend. And you know, he's pretty routine driven that way.
Sean, Teron Armstead has developed into one of the top players in the league. Talk about his development from the time you drafted him to what you're seeing today.
Well, he's a tremendous athlete, and if you went back all the way to the combine and you really looked at some of the numbers, they were unique for a tackle. You know, how he ran, his movement skills. He played at a small school, but you know, was a real good third-round pick for us. He's got fantastic leadership. You know, he's tough. Shoot, I can remember the first game he started, and then that year we're in the playoffs. I mean, there's a toughness, and I mean by not only a physical toughness, but there's a mental toughness with him. You know, some grit, and I think that clearly he's one of our leaders on this team, and someone that's well respected.
Sean, you're getting with the officials. They come in later today. Anything specific, point emphasis-wise, you're looking to ask them?
So typically when they come in, last night they'll have a presentation. There's a video they show. We'll talk about the rule changes. We'll talk about the points of emphasis. There'll be questions in the room. They'll show the video, and then, you know, we're fortunate now to have them, today, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You know, we'll have them for a stretch where the players can communicate. They'll throw a flag on the field. We won't stop the drill, but you know, there's always that positive interaction that you get relative to how they see certain things, and we've got a handful of guys we haven't worked with before, and I think that's good.
Your defensive backs or secondary, they have questions about the new pass interference rule. They come to you about that?
No, I don't think. Look, there's no new standard. Pass interference is going to be evaluated just like it has been before on the field, and then, you know, what's out of their control is if it goes to replay. So the questions relative to pass interference being something that can be challenged, or offensive pass interference, is, you know, when it goes back to New York, what's the standard there? And it's clear and obvious, and those guys have all the angles and copies to look at a play. And then, of course, inside 2 minutes, the replay official is in charge of stopping it, and, you know, what are his standards? And it's real time, you know, seeing it real time on a replay. So that was one of the things we discussed, but we discussed a lot of different things last night.
Sean, does this even get talked about? Are they involved the length of a game with the TV network people, as far as, you know, when you got rule changes and all, when do they want how long a game to last? Does that even come about?
Yeah,
Is that
I mean,
behind the scenes?
that's kind of behind the scenes, because that can be controlled relative to how long your halftime is. That can be controlled relative to when the ball's in play to start the second half. There's things that can take place to keep it at that spot where they want it, that are really outside the officials and outside the coaches and the players, and so when it's a change, though, relative timing, you know, sometimes you're playing in a stadium. Your halftime in our league's pretty quick, and, you know, if you're walking back up a ramp to your right, down the hallway to a locker room, you're probably quickly going to the restroom, maybe grabbing something to drink or eat. Coaches are going through quick adjustments, and then you're meeting, and then you're returning. So the halftime, compared to a college halftime, is much different.
So about a week into camp, is the depth kind of playing out the way you thought it was going to? Is going to be a lot of guys kind of fighting for a few?
Yeah, I mean, look, yesterday was the first time we met personnel-wise. It's still early, and so, you know, we're working with a lot of different rotations, and you know, there's a lot ahead of us here. So it's still about the technique and fundamentals, making sure that the players know their assignments. And then that'll begin to unfold, and all of this is important.
Sean, when a player is new to a team, is there a point during training camp when you start worrying about how much missed time they might accumulate compared to they're a veteran and there's no concern at all?
No, the alert when a player's new is, where's he coming from? Is he coming from a team where he just finished playing and he's in shape? Has he been in an off-season program? Has he not been in an off-season program? It's more about what's he ready for, so that we don't have an injury the first, you know, couple days he's out here. So a lot of it depends on the specific player.
Did Mike have to do the conditioning drill, or was there not really?
Well, we just got here, so at some point we'll work through that.
Yeah.
You had some coaches that interviewed around the league on your
Yeah.
staff.
Were you surprised you were able to retain both your offensive and defensive? I mean, you got a good staff.
Yeah, a lot of that is really out of your control. I've said this before. I think it's a good thing, and it's something that you want to, as the head coach, help. You want to see these guys have these opportunities, you know, especially in a head coaching position or even a coordinator position. So, you know, I think we've got a handful of guys that are going to be head coaches in this league on this current staff. And now, what specifically are the teams looking for that they interview with? I don't know, and that varies per team. But you know, you get a little bit more concerned if no one's calling.
Right, but you have to feel good about the retention.
Oh,
guys would be
listen,
one to leave.
I like our group. Yeah, absolutely. You know, a lot of these guys I've been with for quite a while. Some of them maybe not as long, but yeah, I mean, I think that that the number one thing I learned is when you're an assistant, you know, you focus on where your feet are at the ground at that time, and focus on working and doing your job. This is a small league. It's, you know, it's not, there aren't a lot of secrets, and very quickly word gets out as to who's doing well, and I think if you do that, those other things come. All right, thank you.